All right, guys, we got legs today. I'm gonna be honest, I'm a bit nervous filming. I don't know why. I'm like kind of nervous right now, probably because it's busy and I'm filming at a different time. I normally don't film these workout videos on the weekend, but you know, it is what it is. We're here, we got legs. I'm also gonna be honest, the second time, I literally do not feel like doing this today. I don't feel like training at all, and definitely not legs, but I have to get a video out to you guys. And more importantly, I hate to say it, even though I love you guys, it's not even about you. It's about me. I have to do this. I have to train. And even if you don't want to do something, I know I've said in a previous video, you know, try to make things as fun as you can. But it's not always going to be fun. No matter how much you customize your training, there's going to be days where you're like, I don't care to be here right now. And that's kind of how I feel. But we're here. We're going to do it. I'm actually changing things up. We're starting with pendulum squat today. Normally, I'm doing calves. I've told you in the past I like starting with calves because it helps out with the mobility, but also kind of allows me to sort of utilize more of my energy and strength in the beginning of my workout towards the calves. That being said, we're starting with pendulum. I am still going to do calves earlier on in this workout. Probably going to do them actually during the second exercise. Maybe not really superset, but because I'm going to use leg press, that's when I'll probably train the calves. So I'll just do calves on leg press, which we haven't done. So it'll be kind of fun to show you guys, you know, the setup and execution for calves on a leg press. Now, the reason I'm starting with pendulum as opposed to the hack squat is just, honestly, just to change things up a bit. Also for you guys, I want to show you different machines and different equipment, different exercises to teach you guys, because I know a lot of gyms now do have a pendulum squat, and this is a fantastic movement. So I'm going to go through all the form and the setup for this. I don't really remember if I have a video on this already. I know I have filmed one in the past. I filmed a lot of videos that I actually haven't posted, believe it or not. So this could be the first one. I can't remember, but if I've already gone through this, well, we're going through it again. So I've done 2 warm-up sets already, or 3, sorry. I'm all over the place, see what I mean? Done 3 warm-up sets, and I think I'm only gonna do about 3 working sets here, 2 of which I'm going like balls to the wall failure. Hopefully. I mean, I say that and our mind wants to quit early. So I'm gonna try to push the last 2 sets right to failure, like full on, I can't even get this thing up. That's what, I was gonna say she said, but that's what he said. Anyways, no sex jokes. We're gonna get focused because we got to do this. So first working set here, aiming for, again, somewhere between 8 and 12 reps. Now I've got 3 plates on. This is gonna be pretty challenging, but I think I could probably push to that 12 and kind of stop shy 1 to 2 reps of failure, which is kind of my goal. If I don't get to 12, it's not a big deal. Ooh. 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 Oh. Ooh. Uh. 8. We're gonna stop at 10. I'm gonna stop at 10. Hold on. Lightheaded. Okay, that's fine. Oh shit. It's always that first exercise. First set of squats just kind of makes you so lightheaded, at least for me. Now for my second set, I'm gonna go up in weight. We'll play it by ear. Definitely go up again in weight on this next set, and then we'll play it by ear and see if we can go even heavier on the third set, third and final. But that was a pretty good set. I'm happy with that. 4. Might be a little overzealous with this weight, because I haven't filmed, believe it or not, in a bunch of weeks. So whenever I don't film, what happens is I usually stockpile a bunch of videos, but I've completely posted all the ones that I have sort of in reserve. So I try to post once a week, as you see, and I normally like to keep at least 3 videos, 2 to 3 videos in reserve, but this one I'm literally filming. So when I drop this, it'll actually be out pretty much in a day or so from now. So, which doesn't matter to you guys, because as you're watching this, it literally won't make any difference. But for me, I don't know where the hell I was going with this, but my point was, I guess I was saying I haven't filmed in a while. So therefore I get a little rusty, like anything we do. If we take time off, you know, get a little rusty. My brain's a little foggy, nerves, plus it's leg day. Don't really feel like being here, but you know, I'm not complaining either. So I'm just airing it out, you know, airing out the dirty laundry. We have the second working set. On the third set, I think I'm going to run through the form, but for this set, we're just going to remain focused. And again, because we went heavier, I'm still aiming for that 8 to 12. Definitely not going to get 12. May not even get 10. Going to push for 8. That's the goal. Come on. Oh, come on. Come on. Come on. Oh shit. That's it. That's it. I literally hooked that right at the last second. My legs were fucking done. Like literally just gave out. Which isn't a big deal, but I think we bring that up. That's just like a safety. So in the event that I do go all the way down, I'm not like trapped in the bottom of the machine, so to speak, because that wouldn't be fun. All right, guys, so for the form and execution of this actual movement, first and foremost is you want to set this up to best suit you or your body. Now, there isn't really much to actually set up here, but 2 big things, or at least one big thing, is this platform. A lot of these machines on the Pendulum, you can adjust the angle of this actual platform here. Now, I have mine set, I think, to 3 or 4, I can't tell. Somewhere around 4, okay. It doesn't fully matter, but I like to have this platform higher up for me, because I feel like, one, I have pretty good ankle mobility to begin with. So what I mean by that is, as I come down, my knees can go quite a distance over my toes without my heels elevating up like this. So I have pretty good ankle mobility, meaning I have a good flexibility, range of motion, but strength within that range of motion, which is the mobility. So having this platform adjusted to a specific level that suits you. Now, if you have poor ankle mobility, the great thing is you can put this platform on the lowest level all the way down, and that'll somewhat emulate like a slight heel elevated movement. So in other words, it would be like having a wedge underneath your heel, because this board now would be slightly slanted that way. So you're not going to have as much ankle flexion in the actual movement, if that's sort of a limiting factor for you. Now, having it up more though, you're going to just have more, in my opinion, stability in the actual movement, because you're not going to feel like your feet are trying to slide forward. They're not going to, but there is that. The next thing is going to be this safety sort of, fuck, I can't think right now, oh my gosh. For the depth to go down. If you have that all the way down and you're someone who's a lot shorter, I'm roughly 6'1", 6'1", 6'1" if I'm rounding up. So I am taller, I guess. So I don't like going all the way down. I'm not going to bottom out this machine. So that's why I have that actually set up. That is why I brought that up a few levels, because when I do go down, and if I go past failure and I get into a range that I'm, you know, in a position that's compromising to the point where I become almost trapped under this machine with heavy weight, it's not fun. You're kind of like crammed and you're trying to get out. So definitely adjust that to best suit your body. But make sure that you're not going all the way down in a deep range, but you start hitting it. So you want to kind of find that sort of happy medium, sweet spot. Now, when it comes to the actual movement here, I'm not going to show you because I've got 4 plates on, but I'll run through it. And then when I actually go and do it, you'll see what I mean. Starting with foot positioning, you want to have a regular foot stance that you normally would when you're squatting or on a leg press or on a hack squat. So for me, that's roughly wider than shoulder width apart. Next, I want my feet to be low enough on this platform that I can get a lot of knee flexion, because again, the whole point of the pendulum is to target and load the quads. So I want to make sure that I'm getting a significant amount of knees traveling over top of my toes and past my toes, because that's going to give me the greatest amount of knee flexion in the actual movement, which in turn will give me the greatest amount of stimulus on the actual quads. So having your feet positioned too high up is only going to do yourself a disservice in terms of trying to load and lengthen your quads, because the higher up they are, the less knee flexion you're going to be getting. The lower down they are, the more knee flexion you'll be getting, but then you also run into another limiting factor, which I kind of already covered, which is having your heels start to elevate like this. Now, there's nothing necessarily inherently wrong with that, but it can add a lot of stress to the back of your ankle, your Achilles, and obviously your feet as well will be feeling it a lot. You'll almost feel too much sensation in your feet and even sometimes your knees, to the point where that can become just a limiting factor in the actual movement. So have your feet somewhere in that sweet spot that's low enough that gives you the greatest amount of knee flexion without your heels start to elevate in the bottom. Now, as you initiate every single rep, what I want you thinking about is, one, keeping the pressure through the mid of your foot. This part of your foot here, I've stressed this a bunch, but whenever you're pressing, doesn't matter if you're squatting, if you're leg pressing, if you're lunging, you're keeping the pressure through that mid of your foot. Even with RDLs or deadlifts, I keep that pressure, and it's almost like I'm pronating my foot slightly inward like this and almost trying to touch that middle portion of my arch to the ground to create as much surface area on my foot. The greater amount of surface area you have, the more stability you have in the actual movement. So you'll be able to actually generate a lot more force. Now, as you press, what I'm thinking about is actually sliding my foot up that platform and thinking about pulling my knee down, similar to a leg extension. So I'm actually thinking about almost performing a leg extension on this movement by pushing into that platform, but also pulling knees down. So as I come down in the movement, knees come forward, pushing knees forward. And then as I press, I'm actually pulling knees back. And what that's doing is two things. One, it's already engaging my quads in the movement, which is the whole point of this movement. But two, it's driving my hips and my lower back against this pad the entire time, which is what I want. If I have this pad, my back against this pad the entire time, again, I'm going to be more stable throughout my hips, and I'm going to be able to create as much tension overall in my actual quads and in my legs. So keeping your lower back against this pad the entire time as you press, you do not want your hips and lower back to fully round off that pad as you come down. In other words, I don't want to be like drifting away from that pad and then coming back into it. So that's pretty much it. I know that was kind of a long-winded explanation, but those are kind of the key points. Just to summarize, once you have the machine set up, is one, feet at a comfortable width that you normally use when you're pressing, squatting, leg press, things like that. Two, feet also low enough on the platform to allow a greater amount of knee flexion, whatever's comfortable, just to the point where your heels do not elevate off the platform. 3 or 4 rather, is going to be keeping your back, your low back against that pad the entire time as you come down into the movement. And then lastly, as you press, you're pulling knees back, squeezing your quads the whole movement. Control, control, control. With that being said, we got our 4th and final set here, 3rd and final set rather, and we're going right to failure. All right, come on. Woo. Woo. Come on. Sorry. Oh. Oh. Ah, you bitch. Come on. Come on. That's it. Oh, is that touching the thing? Oh my God. Honestly, it's a good thing that I actually did bring that up, because that was all the way down, coming all the way down after. If I didn't have that thing all the way up, I would be stuck. Holy shit. So definitely always check the machine, and better yet, don't rush into it. Start with no weight on the actual machine when you're setting it up, especially if you haven't used it in a while, just to test all the features and make sure that it's set up accordingly, and preemptively think, okay, if I'm taking this to failure, then I want to make sure that I can actually get out of it and not get like pinned in an awkward ass position, potentially injuring myself, or just embarrassingly getting stuck and then having to call for help. All right. Okay. That's it there. I'd say we went right to failure on that one. We're going to do leg press next, and then calves, and then to finish off with a superset of leg extensions and standing hamstring curls. So I'm going to see you there on the leg press. For the leg press, we're starting with just one warm-up set. So I'm not going too light, I'm not going too heavy either. Just something that I can push, 6 to 8 reps, focusing on the range of motion and making sure that I feel good in the actual movement. And also to gauge my strength. After that, going right to failure for 2 sets pretty much. I'm going to see how my strength actually is on this. Normally I do about 6 plates on either side for the most part, but we'll see how I feel with 3 plates as my warm-up. I'm just thinking, because having this pad, this backrest all the way down is beneficial in terms of getting the most range of motion that you possibly can for your quads. The caveat to that though is, like, this machine has they're like these little pistons with springs in them, just to prevent you from getting pinned or crushed. So it adds a slower cushion if this came all the way down, but also enough of a spring to get you out of it. Never mind, this isn't actually a belt wrap. My point is that these things are like this long, literally, and that's at the lowest level, adjusted all the way down. So my point is, if I bring this all the way down, I'm actually kind of reducing the range of motion anyways, because I'm bottoming out, hitting these in the bottom regardless. So I think I'm actually going to bring this seat up 1 notch. So I am still leaning back in the movement. I'm not fully upright because, again, if your focus is quads, you don't want this pad to be fully upright because then you're just, again, minimizing any sort of range of motion that you're going to get. Having this pad higher up would be better for if your focus is glute training. But again, my focus is mainly quads, so I'm still going to have this slanted back, but just enough that I'm not bottoming out the machine. So the 3 plates felt fine, wasn't too alarming. I haven't lost that much strength since that pendulum squat, so we're going to go to 5 to start. 3 working sets here. Similar concept where, sorry, I'm going to grab a plate. Similar concept though, where the last 2 working sets, I'm going to go right to failure. This one, I'm going to stop shy 1 to 2 reps, so it still counts. Again, rep range is 8 to 12, keeping things simple in this training block with the rep ranges. Okay. Stop at 10. 6 plates. 8 to 12 to failure. Probably failing around 10. I think for this set, no, I'm going to failure. I was gonna say, I think for this set, we'll stop just shy of failure so I don't have to get pinned and then take plates off to push it back up. This is what our mind does. Our mind tries to find every exit strategy out of doing a set right to failure. And again, guys, you don't have to take every set to failure. Like I've said many times, push yourself, try taking yourself to failure on at least 1 set for every exercise that you do to see what it actually feels like and to see what your limits are. Another thing is you want to know what failure actually feels like in order to actually pull back from failure to be like, yeah, I did 1 to 2 reps in reserve, so to speak, or stopped 1 to 2 reps shy of failure, so to speak. If you tell that to someone who's never taken a set to failure, 1 to 2 reps shy is more like, in my humble opinion and in my experience, is more like 5 to 8 reps in reserve. A lot of people actually think that they're at failure when they still could have gotten definitely 5 reps. And then sometimes even as much as 10. People tend to give out way earlier in their sets. Okay, second working set. 6 plates, right to failure. Come on. Come on. That's it. I think we're going to stay at that weight. We're not going to go out here. 9 reps, I think. I don't know. I'll have to look back on that. Fine. It's what I wanted. And again, you don't have to go right to failure like that. You can definitely stop 1 to 2 reps shy. I just like doing this and incorporating this. 1, for educational purposes, to show you guys what true failure looks like, especially without a spot. So in other words, like, there's literally no way I could have pushed that back up. My legs just completely gave out. And then 2, for my own sanity and my own sake, just to know where I'm at strength-wise. Last time we went right to failure on the hack squat to see whereabouts am I on that in terms of strength and how many plates that I can actually do. And then 2, pendulum, and now this. So I'm not necessarily going to do this every single workout, but I definitely like to take at least 1 working set for bigger movements and even isolated movements, depending on the movement though, right to failure. Like I mentioned in a previous video, upper body stuff I don't. If we're talking like chest, certain presses and things like that, I don't like going, you know, in terms of like crazy amount of weight for 3 reps. Been there, done that, and my shoulder hates me for it. So, but for this stuff, it's fine. Okay, so we got 1 more working set here. Same exact thing. I'm just taking the plates off just so I have a little lighter and easier time getting this out of the bottom. Okay. All right. Now we put the plates back on. I think another thing too is what I want to start training is actually glute focused stuff. I definitely don't do enough of that. I used to, but I want to start incorporating things like hip thrusts and stuff. And again, I've said this before, if there's any exercise that you guys want me to cover and go over, just let me know. Just write it down. Be like, hey, Pete, can you go over this exercise, or can you show us or demonstrate this particular movement? And for the most part, 9 times out of 10, I have no problem doing that. Obviously, if it's an exercise that, 1, I don't have access to here based on the machine, or 2, if it's something that is kind of like crazy redundant or not worth it, then I'll actually just cover that in a different video and just explain, like, you know, exercises that I don't think are worth doing. But yes, send me comments and recommendations because it helps. All right, guys, so for the form, what I want you guys thinking about, once you have this machine set up, 2 is going to be foot positioning. Again, have your feet sort of in a position that's comfortable for you in terms of what you normally squat with, or leg press. I mean, for the sake of this leg press. So if you're just trying this out, start with something like slightly wider than shoulder width just to see how that feels. The wider you go, just know the more adductor you're actually going to be working. The more narrow you go, the less adductor you're going to be working. So it's just something to keep in mind. I like to have it slightly wider than shoulder width. That just overall lets me target, you know, the adductors and quads. And then also, I have my feet low on that platform, if you notice. So I keep them as low as I possibly can. I personally don't want my heels elevating in the movement. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but I'd avoid and err on the side of caution that if you are pushing heavier weight, you don't want your heels elevating. It can cause a lot more strain in your feet and in your ankles, and in your calves in the back, like the tendon. So make sure your heels are flat on that pad as you're pressing. Have them low as possible to get as much knee flexion. And then again, the higher your feet are on this platform, the more glute and less quad you're going to be focused on. So pretty straightforward. Similar principles when you're pressing. You're literally just thinking about pulling those knees down, extending the knee, squeezing the quad, and then as you descend on that eccentric or that negative, you're controlling every rep, you're controlling that negative, pushing those knees up, but also pulling those knees as far back as you can to create as much of a stretch in the quads as you possibly can without, and this is a big one again, without your lower back rounding off. So I don't want you coming all the way down to the point where you're rounding underneath like this. That can place too much pressure in your lower back. And usually when people complain about lower back pain when they're leg pressing, that is usually the main culprit. So make sure you're almost arching, keeping that chest up the entire time, pushing your butt and hips against that pad the entire time, and then allowing your knee to come back as far as possible in the actual movement. As you push, extend that knee, squeeze that quad. Okay, 3rd and final set, right to failure. And then we got calves. Come on. Come on. Last set. That was a shitty rep. I bounced out of the bottom for sure. Come on. That's it. That's it. Okay. There we go. Okay, we're gonna keep the weight the exact same for the calves. Sorry. I'm gonna show you that. I'm actually gonna bring this backrest up higher up. That way it just gives me more surface area and a sharper angle, almost 90 degrees, to keep me stable in this movement, because I don't want to be sliding up as I'm training the calves. So I just find it allows me to focus more on the calves, less about pulling myself into that seat. Okay, now for the calves, like I said, I'm doing the same weight that I just did, so 6 plates on each side. I'm not really taking the weight off. For my forms is, I'm not gonna fully extend in the movement. I'm just gonna come all the way down, get a deep stretch, keeping my knees locked in position the entire time, but only come up like halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way. So purposely loading and training the length and range of the actual movement. And then, yeah, I'm saving them now. Still earlier on. Well, it's halfway through the workout. It's not earlier on. So my energy levels are starting to dip a bit, but changing it up for you guys. And two, the weight's already set up. It's already set up for me, and I wanted to use leg press today. There's no point in doing leg press calves in the beginning if you're already going to do leg press. May as well just pair them together. And then lastly, actually, that I'm thinking about it, in hindsight, this probably would have been completely fine to do a working set and then superset it with calves. I probably should have done that. That would have been way more efficient. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to show you a couple sets, and then we're going to move on. Okay. Just coming all the way back, just to halfway. Okay. Now we're not playing around with these locks. I'm keeping it literally locked the entire time. I don't want to unlock it, just because safety reasons. If my foot were to slip off that thing's coming down on my knee, and then I have a broken knee. So when you're doing leg press calves, your feet can start to slip, especially if you're someone who doesn't place almost half your foot on. If you place just your toes on, you're more prone to actually having that slip off, which is something to be concerned of. So definitely have these locks locked the entire time. Sometimes you'll forget and you'll think like, oh, because you're using leg press, you're so used to unlocking it when you're about to initiate a rep. Keep them locked the entire time. Okay, second set. Okay. When it comes to calf training, if you're someone who has a difficult time growing your calves, myself included, I know genetics is a big role in that, but I also think training frequency and volume and the intensity in which you train at is the most important. So if you're someone who just trains them once a week or just on leg days and you only do a couple sets, or you half rep it from the top and you bounce and you're not really working in a deep range of motion and focusing on that deep range, then that's probably most often than not the reason why your calves are just not growing. So really focus on coming down in a deep range, train with higher intensity. Don't worry about the weight necessarily in the beginning. Just focus on getting that deep stretch. Hold it for 1 to 2 seconds, even up to 5 seconds to get used to that. And then add on frequency and volume as you get more comfortable with training them properly. So what I mean by that is I will train calves minimum 2 times a week, but definitely I personally try to aim for, 3 times a week. So I even throw them on my upper body days, and I'll just do them usually towards the end on those days. So, you know, just a little food for thought. Okay, we got last set. Again, right to failure. Now, if you notice, my knees are locked the entire time. I'm not bending them around and I'm not bouncing out of the movement. I'm holding that, pulling my toes towards my shins, stretching those calves, and then driving that ball and my big foot through the platform. Only coming up halfway. So basically until my ankles are at 90 degrees. Okay, that's it. All right, we got hamstrings supersetted with leg extension, and then we're up. Okay. All right, that was just one warm-up set. We're gonna do one more. We're gonna do a warm-up here. I'm actually only using these. Watch out behind you. I'm only using the isolateral leg extension, pairing it with the isolateral standing hamstring, honestly, because they're just side by side. So I don't have to walk too far. I normally don't love the isolateral leg extension. Personally, for me, it just feels floaty. It feels a little weird. I don't love it. But for the sake of time and efficiency, it's good enough for what it is I want to do. And what I want to do is just superset these two movements together, starting with a hamstring. So we got 3 working sets total here. Now my focus for the hamstring, it's standing, but what I want you to focus on and watch what I'm doing is I'm actually leaning and draping myself over top of that pad, using that elbow pad actually as a chest pad. So I can actually almost be in more of like the seated position. So I'm creating more hip flexion, which is actually gonna lengthen my hamstring more. So I'm training my hamstring in more of a lengthened state, as opposed to being upright like this, training it in more of a shortened state like you would on this movement or even a lying. I'm actually laying on that pad and pulling myself down against it to create more hip flexion, again, to target those hamstrings in more of a lengthened state. And then I'm going right into leg extensions, going right to failure. I'm gonna put this right on the seat so no one takes it. Okay, working set number 1. Okay. Now for the setup for this quickly, I've got this backrest all the way at the back. This is just gonna help me train the quads, particularly that rectus femoris, in more of a lengthened state. So because I'm leaning back more, less hip flexion, more length in that quad. Good. All right. All right. Our second set. We got one more set, and then we're gonna call it. But I wanted to say, this week went to my first concert, which some of you listening might be like, you know, as a 30-year-old, how the hell have you not gone to a concert? I've only been to free concerts, so let me put an asterisk around that. But it's the first real concert I went to, and I went and saw Creed. So it's pretty cool, really cool experience. I ended up, I'm not a big drinker anymore. I was in my early 20s and stuff, but I did have a few drinks for the first time in a long time. And every single time, I didn't even get drunk, but every time I hate it, can't stand it. The feeling you get, I don't know about you guys, but I generally get like what's called hangxiety, which is this anxiety the next day when you're hungover. Again, I wasn't hungover, but just the lack of sleep, being out late, combined with a couple drinks. The recipe for disaster and not fun. So that being said, though, it was a lot of fun. And then another thing I wanted to say, besides it being fun, was because again, like I don't go out to big events like that often. I probably should do more of that. I've been more of like, if I'm being honest, like more of a hermit in my later 20s, partly due to COVID and everything. But that being like in terms of lockdowns. But that being said, what I wanted to say is what I experienced, which was cool, is, you know, I'm a fan of Creed. I've listened to their music all through the years of growing up, and it's really cool. I guess I'd never experienced this, going and seeing a band that you like or you enjoy their music in person, especially them being really good live, which they were. I mean, he sounded exactly like he sounds, if not actually better than listening to it on Spotify, probably because of the atmosphere and everything. and everyone singing along does make a difference. So it adds to the vibes. But I just thought that was a cool thing to be able to see people that you listen to, you know, watching them on stage and watching them kind of do their thing. It's a surreal feeling, right? Because you're like only used to them literally in your ear on your phone on Spotify, but seeing them actually move on stage and perform and having them sound, you know, identical is it was a cool experience. So I'm delaying this last set, but this is it. So last set, we're going right to failure. I want to do a Q&A, but again, as always, we run low on the battery. So I think I'm going to do like a segment attached to this video of a Q&A towards the end, where I want to actually answer your questions that you guys have wrote in my previous, like, you know, videos. So for the form on this last set, like every hamstring movement, like we've gone over, I literally am driving my knee into this this platform or this pad the entire time. So what I mean by that is I'm not just thinking about curling my heel up like this, because I don't want my knee to be drifting back. I'm treating this almost like a preacher curl when you're doing biceps. So I'm actually driving this knee forward as I pull that heel or ankle up, or calf rather, towards my hamstring. So I'm literally just thinking about bringing my calf to my hamstring, but letting this knee create contact and pressure the entire time on that pad. That's going to allow me to have greater stability and greater force output in the actual movement. And I'm not going to be doing this weird extending at the hip movement, because my goal, I mean, in this is not to target the glute. I'm literally here to target, you know, the hamstring. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Again, I'm draping myself over. I'm using this pad as actually a chest pad. There's a crossbar in front of this machine. If you have this Hammer Strength one at your gym, you know what I mean. I'm literally gripping it and pulling myself into that to create more stability the entire time, so I'm not moving around at all. And then lastly, just control every rep, control that eccentric, come all the way down into that deep stretch. And then again, think about pulling that calf to your hamstring. Oh. Oh. Now, normally I'm using my wrist wraps on this machine, but I forgot. So we're just pulling as hard as I can into these handles to keep myself stable the entire time. Again, pointing knees straight the entire time. I'm not having them flared out like this. So keeping knees straight, pulling into that seat, leaning back. Just extending, squeezing the quads. All right, guys, that is it for today's workout. I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you made it this far in the video, as always, you guys are ultimately the real ones. I appreciate all your support and comments always. Again, please leave me comments. Ask as much questions as possible. it just helps feed the content for me. It helps me, you know, one, I'm losing train of thought. One, it just helps me think of things to say actually in these videos, so I don't have to ramble on about a Creed concert. But two, it also, you know, lets me connect with you guys more importantly. So I get to actually see where you guys are coming from, and I can help you guys a lot more in depth and make it more personal. So please leave me comments, always ask questions. No question is a dumb question. And then again, as always, thank you so much. Continue to work hard, continue to be diligent, and as always, be intentional with your movements, and take it easy. I will see you on the next video. That being said though, before you go, there'll probably be a Q&A starting now.